The wind howled through the quiet streets of Maple Hollow as snowflakes danced in the pale blue morning light. It was the kind of winter day that bit through gloves and numbed fingertips, a day when even the air felt heavy with silence. At 6:43 a.m., the streets were mostly deserted, except for the occasional crunch of boots on ice or the hiss of tires gliding over fresh snow. Rick, a longtime school bus driver with silvering hair and a worn thermos of coffee beside him, turned the corner onto Cedar Lane. His yellow bus rumbled through the quiet, headlights casting golden beams on the frosted street ahead. It was his usual route, one he'd driven for nearly 20 years, but this morning would be anything but routine. As he approached the stop sign near the corner bench, just outside the shuttered florist shop, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just snow piled up oddly, or maybe a student's forgotten backpack. But as the bus crept closer, he slowed down. There it was, a dark green backpack, zipped tight and dusted with snow, sitting perfectly upright on the bench. Rick frowned. Nobody left things like that here. Not in the middle of winter. Not in this kind of cold. He eased the bus to a stop, flipped on the hazard lights, and stepped out, bracing against the frigid wind. His boots crunched across the snowy sidewalk as he approached the bench, the early sun just beginning to cast a faint pink hue over the rooftops. The backpack didn't move, but as he got closer, Rick felt his chest tighten. There was a sound, barely a sound, like the faintest whimper. It wasn't loud, it wasn't urgent, but it was the sound of something alive. He knelt slowly, brushing off the snow, and unzipped the top flap. Inside was a pair of brown eyes, terrified, silent, frozen. A tiny German shepherd puppy was curled up inside, her tiny body trembling so violently Rick could feel the vibration in the air. Her fur was matted in places, crusted with frost. Her ears drooped low in fear and cold. Rick's heart dropped. "Oh God," he whispered, pulling off his scarf and wrapping it around the tiny pup. She didn't resist. She didn't even whimper. She just looked up at him with the kind of eyes that asked a question no human could bear to answer. Why? Tucked in the side pocket of the backpack was a folded piece of paper. Rick opened it with shaking hands. "Her name is Bella. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." That was it. No name. No phone number. No explanation. Rick stood there in the snow, staring at the note as the wind whipped past him and the sky slowly brightened. The puppy Bella nestled into the scarf, still shivering but now warm in human arms. Rick looked back at the bus, his heart pounding, his breath rising in clouds. There were kids waiting along the route. He had a job to do. But this couldn't wait. He opened the bus door and stepped inside with Bella cradled in his arms. "Mr. Rick?" asked a sleepy-eyed boy in the front seat. "What's that?" Rick gently placed Bella on the front seat beside him and took his place behind the wheel. "This," he said softly, "is someone who needs our help." The rest of the drive was quiet, with children peeking over the seats to catch glimpses of the puppy. Some whispered, some stared wide-eyed, and Bella, she just curled up in the scarf and closed her eyes, her breathing uneven, her tiny paws twitching as if dreaming of a different place, a different moment in time. By the time the last child got off, Rick didn't head back to the depot. Instead, he drove straight to the Pine Hollow Veterinary Clinic, calling ahead as he cradled Bella in one hand and the note in the other. Dr. Langston met him at the door, her expression shifting from confusion to horror the moment she saw the tiny dog. They worked quickly, checking vitals, warming her gently, administering fluids. Bella never cried, not once. She just looked up at them with wide, trusting eyes. She didn't know who these people were, but she was too tired, too cold, too broken to fight. "She's severely hypothermic," Dr. Langston said, voice tight with emotion. "If you hadn't found her when you did." Rick nodded slowly, the note still crumpled in his hand. "Someone left her," he said. "Someone who loved her enough to write this, but not enough to stay." The vet sighed. Or maybe they didn't have a choice. Rick looked down at Bella, who now had a soft blanket over her and a tiny heated pad under her body. Her eyes were still open, still watching. That night, Rick couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about those eyes, about that note. "Please take care of her. I had no other choice. He thought about the child who must have written it. It had to be a child. No adult would leave such a desperate, honest message scrawled in pencil on a piece of school paper. And the backpack, it had cartoons on it. Bright characters and faded letters. A kid left her. Maybe it was a child who couldn't keep her. Maybe they were in danger. Maybe they were moving. Maybe they weren't safe. Whatever the reason, they loved her enough to make sure someone found her. Rick stared at the ceiling as the clock ticked past midnight. He would find out who that child was. And Bella. He wouldn't let her become just another forgotten rescue. This wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The scent of antiseptic hung lightly in the air of Pine Hollow Veterinary Clinic, mingled with the gentle hum of heaters working overtime to fight off the chill clawing at the windows. Outside, snowflakes continued their quiet descent, blanketing the small town like nature's hush over heartbreak. But inside room 3, a fragile spark of life stirred beneath a blanket of fleece. Bella, the tiny German shepherd puppy, lay curled on the heated table, her breathing slow but steady. Her ears no longer drooped quite so low. Her paws, once ice-cold and cracked, had begun to soften under the warm compresses and care of the clinic staff. She didn't whimper anymore, but she didn't wag her tail either. It was as if her little heart hadn't quite decided if it could believe in the world again. Rick sat beside her, still in his bus driver uniform, sipping a now-cold cup of vending machine coffee. He hadn't left the clinic since that morning, not even to go home. Something about Bella had wrapped around his soul like a vine, gentle, desperate, unwilling to let go. Dr. Langston entered quietly, a clipboard in hand and her eyes heavy with the kind of tired only those who care too much can understand. "She's responding to the fluids," she said gently. Her body temperature stabilized. "The next 24 hours are still critical, but she's a fighter." Rick looked down at Bella, her small frame rising and falling with each breath. "She didn't even make a sound," he murmured. "When I found her, not even a bark, just those eyes." Dr. Langston nodded. "Shock, cold, abandonment. Puppies this young, they shut down when they're scared. But she didn't bite, didn't growl. That says something." Rick pulled the note from his coat pocket again. It was creased now, soft at the edges, but the pencil scrawl was still legible. "Her name is Bella. She's gentle. Please take care of her. I had no other choice." He stared at it for a long time. "Someone loved her," he said finally. "Someone who couldn't keep her, but loved her enough to make sure she was found." Dr. Langston sat beside him. "You think it was a kid?" Rick nodded slowly. "The backpack, it had cartoon characters. Dino Pals or something like that. Popular with the younger grades. The handwriting was careful, but not quite steady, like someone who just learned cursive." He folded the note again, carefully this time. "I want to find them," he whispered. "The one who left her." Later that afternoon, Rick returned to the bus depot to report the incident. Word spread quickly, first among the drivers, then the school staff, and within hours, the entire town seemed to be whispering about the puppy found in a backpack. At Pineview Elementary, children huddled in corners during recess, whispering about the dog in the bag and wondering aloud who it belonged to. A few teachers cried when they read the note Rick had shared. Others printed out flyers with Bella's picture and taped them near the town's coffee shop, library, and grocery store. Rick visited the school office, meeting with Principal Jensen, a warm-hearted woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her braid. "I don't want to scare the kid," Rick said softly, placing the backpack, now empty and cleaned, on her desk. "I just want them to know Bella is safe." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. Maybe the child's still watching. Maybe they walk by the clinic window every day, just to see if she's okay. Rick considered that. He returned to the clinic and placed a small cardboard sign in the front window. "Bella is safe. She's warm. She's waiting. Come say hi." No names, no accusations, just the truth. That night, as Bella lay nestled in a donated plush bed near the reception area, she stirred. Rick sat close, his jacket draped over the back of a chair, watching her sleep with the quiet attention of someone who had grown attached far too quickly. Suddenly, Bella's ears twitched. Then, She lifted her head. Her nose began to quiver, and for the first time since being found, she stood up, wobbly but determined, and padded toward the clinic door. Rick stood, surprised. "Bella." She let out a low, uncertain whine. Her tail didn't wag, but she stood at the door, eyes fixed on the window as if waiting for something or someone. Rick stepped outside. The street was empty, but lying just beneath the window, half buried in the snow, was a single glove, child-sized, blue with a faded cartoon dinosaur stitched into the wrist. Rick picked it up slowly, his breath catching in the icy air. Bella barked once. Just once. It was the sound of recognition. The first clue had arrived. The next morning came not with sunlight, but with a pale, silver gloom that wrapped Maple Hollow in a hushed cold. The wind had settled, but the town remained blanketed in stillness, as if nature itself was holding its breath. Rick stood in front of the Pine Hollow Veterinary Clinic, the blue glove in his hand, its thread stiff from the night's frost. It was small, child-sized. A cartoon dinosaur was stitched into the fabric, a smiling green Tyrannosaurus, its outlines slightly frayed from wear. Rick turned it over in his palm. Something in his chest ached, the kind of ache only a silent question could cause. Had the child come back? Had they watched Bella through the window, afraid to go inside? Bella, now resting in a small recovery pen by the front window, had stirred at the sight of the glove. She hadn't barked. She hadn't wagged her tail. But she'd walked, wobbly but determined, right to the window and stared, nose pressed to the cold glass. That look, Rick would never forget. It was the look of recognition, of longing, the silent pull of a bond that hadn't broken, even in abandonment. He stepped back into the clinic, holding the glove gently. Dr. Langston looked up from the front desk, exhaustion evident in her posture. "You didn't sleep again," she said gently. Rick shook his head. "I couldn't." He approached Bella's pen and crouched beside it, holding out the glove. She took a tentative step forward, her black nose twitching, eyes locked on the fabric. She gave it one soft sniff and let out a low, mournful whine. Rick swallowed hard. "You knew them, didn't you?" Bella didn't answer. She didn't need to. Later that day, Rick visited Pineview Elementary School again, this time with the glove sealed in a clear bag and the backpack slung over his shoulder. Principal Jensen met him in her office with quiet understanding. "We've got over 400 students, Rick," she said, turning the glove in her hands. "Half of them probably have cartoon gloves like this." Rick nodded, but only one of them left Bella in that backpack. He placed the worn green bag on the table. The zipper had been repaired. The faded strap had been sewn back into place. But its character, childish doodles with ink and glitter glue, remained untouched. "I just want to know they're okay," Rick added, voice low. "Bella's okay now, but she's waiting, watching the door. Every time someone walks by, she looks up." The principal reached out, placing her hand over his. "We'll help," she said. "Let's start with the lower grades. I'll talk to the teachers, gently. If anyone's missing a glove, we'll find out." Back at the clinic, Bella's progress continued slowly but steadily. Her appetite returned, small bites of warm chicken and rice fed carefully from Rick's hand. She slept curled in a soft, round bed donated by a local shelter. And most days, she spent her hours nestled beside the window, her nose occasionally fogging up the glass as she watched the snowy sidewalk. The sign Rick had taped to the door remained. "Bella is safe. She's warm. She's waiting. Come say hi." Every now and then, a passerby would stop to read it. Some would walk in to ask, to pet her, to cry softly when they heard the story. The note had been photocopied and posted on the clinic's corkboard. A picture of Bella, wrapped in her red blanket, sat beside it. But the child, no one came forward. Not yet. A week passed. Rick sat beside Bella's bed, reading her the headlines from the local paper. It had become a ritual now, part of a growing routine between them. The staff had begun calling her the Backpack Girl, though everyone knew her name was Bella. Dr. Langston entered, holding a thin file. "Got something for you," she said, eyes curious. Rick looked up. She handed over a copy of a police report. Animal Control flagged this. A neighbor in the Elmwood complex called last month. Heard a dog barking in one of the apartments for hours. No adult answered the door, but a small boy did. Said he wasn't allowed to have a pet. Then the dog was gone. Rick read it twice. Elmwood was on the edge of town. Low-income housing. Lots of movement. Families came and went. Do we have a name? Dr. Langston shook her head. Just the building. Unit 3C. Rick stood slowly, heart pounding. Bella lifted her head. That evening, Rick drove to Elmwood Apartments, the backpack and glove on the passenger seat beside him. Snow began to fall again, soft and gentle this time, as if trying not to interrupt the silence. He parked outside Building 3 and looked up at the window marked 3C. A curtain fluttered briefly. He stepped out of the truck and approached the building, pausing at the steps. For a moment, he hesitated. What if the child was in danger? What if Bella had been taken away for a reason too heavy for a small paws to carry? He didn't knock. Not yet. He turned and looked across the parking lot, at the row of mailboxes, the snow-covered picnic bench, and the bus stop. The same bench, the same spot where he had found Bella. And sitting there now, in the exact same place, was a small figure, bundled in a red coat. Rick's breath caught. He crossed the lot slowly. The figure didn't move. As he got closer, he could see them clearly now. A boy, no more than 9 years old, his hands buried in his sleeves, his cheeks raw from the wind. And beside him, another glove, the match to the one Rick held. The boy looked up as Rick approached, and in his eyes, so wide, so quietly desperate, Rick saw the same unspoken question Bella had asked him that day. Why? But also, is she okay? Rick knelt beside him, snow creaking beneath his knee. You came back, he whispered. The boy didn't speak. He just looked at the backpack slung over Rick's shoulder. And finally, his voice barely audible, he said, "Her name is Bella." The boy's eyes were wide but dark, like twin pools of quiet sorrow. He hadn't said a word since Rick knelt beside him, just stared at the backpack, his breath coming in short, trembling bursts. The air around them was heavy, the snow falling in soft, muffled silence, as if the world was holding its breath for the confession that was coming. Rick watched him carefully, trying to steady his own heart, which seemed to be thudding in time with the boy's barely audible breath. Her name is Bella, the boy repeated softly, his voice thin and fragile, like the ice coating the trees overhead. Rick nodded slowly, not sure what to say. Bella had been waiting, too, waiting for someone who loved her to come back. The quiet heartbreak in her eyes had never left him, and now, standing here, Rick could see it in the boy's face, too. She was always gentle, the boy whispered. She's a good dog. She just wanted to be loved. Rick's heart tightened in his chest. There was no anger in the boy's words, no bitterness, only sorrow, deep aching sorrow. You're not in trouble, Rick said softly. I just want to know why you left her. The boy didn't answer at first. Instead, he wrapped his arms tightly around himself, his eyes fixed on the ground. Rick could see his hands shaking beneath his sleeves. The weight of the words was too much for him, too heavy to bear alone. For a long moment, there was only the sound of the wind brushing against the walls of the building, the soft scrape of snow beneath their feet. Then, finally, the boy spoke, his voice so soft, it was almost lost in the wind. My mom's sick, he whispered. Really sick. Rick's heart sank as he leaned in closer, his eyes softening. The boy looked up, his face crumpling with the weight of his confession. She can't take care of me. She can't take care of Bella. I had to leave her. I didn't want to, but I had to. She's too much. And if I didn't, Bella would have been taken away. I didn't want that. I couldn't let anyone take her from me. Not Bella. She's all I have left. Tears welled in Rick's eyes as he realized the depth of the child's sacrifice. I'm sorry, the boy whispered, voice breaking. I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe someone would take her. Maybe she would be okay. But I didn't want her to be alone. Rick swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. He wanted to tell the boy it wasn't his fault, that he had done the best he could, in the hardest situation anyone could imagine. But instead, he just sat there, silently. For the first time since their encounter, Rick reached out and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. It was the kind of gesture meant to offer comfort. But Rick knew that the boy needed more than just words. He needed understanding. The boy glanced up at him, his face wet with tears. "I love her," he said quietly. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe someone else could take care of her. Maybe someone could love her the way I do." Rick nodded slowly, fighting the overwhelming flood of emotion, threatening to spill over. "You did the right thing," he said, his voice raw. "Bella's safe. She's okay." The boy hesitated, looking at the ground again. "Do you think she'll forgive me?" Rick's voice caught in his throat. The question, so simple and heartbreaking, pierced through him like an arrow. But he wasn't sure how to answer. How could he explain to this child that love wasn't a simple thing? That forgiveness wasn't a checkbox you could mark off? How could he explain that what mattered most was that Bella had never stopped loving him? He swallowed hard, then spoke in a voice that carried all the tenderness he could muster. "Bella's love doesn't come with conditions. She'll never stop loving you. Not in a million years." The boy's lips trembled as he looked back up at Rick. Really, Rick said. "But you have to be brave, okay? You have to be brave for her. She's waiting." The boy blinked and wiped his eyes, a small, fragile smile starting to form on his face, though it was weighed down by a sorrow he'd carried far too long. "I'll come back," he whispered. "I'll make sure she's okay. I promise." Rick nodded, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder again. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly. "You've got help. And so does Bella. You can bring her home. She's your dog, and she'll be waiting for you." The boy looked up, his eyes still wet, but shining with a glimmer of hope for the first time since they'd met. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much." Rick stood and gave the boy one last reassuring look before turning to the clinic. Later that evening, Rick stood at the front desk of the clinic, talking quietly with Dr. Langston. Bella was resting in her pen, curled into a small ball, her tail flicking occasionally as she dreamed. "We have to find him a place," Rick said, his voice hoarse. "A home for them both." Dr. Langston nodded. "The boy." Rick's eyes darkened as he nodded. "His name is Luke. He's been living with his mom. I don't think they've got much, but we'll figure something out." Dr. Langston sighed, her hands resting on the counter. "I'll help you. We'll call the shelter, see if we can get them into a temporary home until we can find something permanent. But Rick, don't forget, this won't be easy." Rick looked up, determination in his eyes. "I'm not going to let them down. Bella deserves to be home, and Luke deserves to have her there with him." As the conversation ended, Rick made a promise, one that would echo in his heart forever. Bella's story wasn't over, and neither was Luke's. The days passed in a blur of paperwork, calls, and small acts of kindness that seemed to come from every corner of Maple Hollow. The town that had once been quiet, almost forgotten in its rural simplicity, now buzzed with something more, a collective effort, driven by an invisible thread that connected them all. A shared hope, a shared love. Rick spent his time coordinating with local shelters, social services, and anyone willing to listen. Luke's mother, Emily, was still in the hospital, too weak to care for herself, let alone her son. But the community rallied. The quiet strength of small towns was on full display. And for once, Rick didn't feel the weight of this mission alone. The call came through late in the afternoon. Rick's phone buzzed in his pocket as he stood outside the Pine Hollow Clinic, watching Bella through the window. She had settled into a rhythm, her healing progressing steadily. She had become part of the clinic's daily life, not just as a patient, but as a living reminder of how far love and care could go. "Rick," Dr. Langston's voice came over the line, her tone filled with relief. "We found a foster home for Luke, a family who's willing to help until his mom's stronger. And we've got a spot for Bella at the shelter, just a few days, until we can get them both together." Rick's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment he had been working toward. The moment when the boy could finally be reunited with his dog. "I'm on my way," Rick said, his voice firm with determination. He hung up the phone and turned back toward the clinic, his gaze lingering on Bella. Her eyes met his through the glass, and for a moment, they shared an understanding. She was ready. She had waited long enough. And so had Luke. The drive to the foster home felt like it took an eternity. Rick's thoughts spun in 1,000 directions. Would Luke feel safe with the new family? Would he be able to forgive himself for the choice he had made? The choice to leave Bella behind? And what about Bella? Would she recognize him? The quiet of the evening seemed to press down on him, suffocating him with the weight of the moment. When he finally pulled into the driveway of a modest home on the outskirts of town, Rick saw Luke standing by the door, his small frame barely visible in the dim light. His red coat looked too big for him, but there was a warmth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Rick stepped out of the truck and walked up to him slowly, trying to give the boy space. Luke's eyes searched his face, as if looking for some sign, some assurance, that everything would be okay. "Is she here?" Luke asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Rick nodded, his chest tightening. "She's waiting for you." Luke's face lit up with a faint but hopeful smile. He stepped forward, his eyes bright with anticipation. As they approached the foster home's front door, Rick could hear the sound of a dog barking from inside. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, an unmistakable rhythm of recognition. Rick opened the door and motioned for Luke to go ahead. The moment Luke stepped inside, he froze. There, on the living room rug, lying in a patch of sunlight, was Bella. Her ears perked up at the sound of the door opening, and when she saw Luke, she immediately stood, her tail wagging as though it was about to break free from her body. Luke's breath caught in his throat. He froze for a moment, unsure if this was real. Was Bella really here? Was she really safe? Then, as if some invisible force had pulled him forward, Luke ran to her, dropping to his knees beside her. Bella bounded toward him, her paws skidding on the wood floor, and in an instant, they were reunited. Luke wrapped his arms around her neck, burying his face in her fur. The world seemed to melt away for that brief moment. Everything that had been hard, everything that had hurt, it didn't matter anymore. Bella was here, and so was he. Rick stood in the doorway, watching them with quiet tears in his eyes. The relief he had been holding in for so long came rushing out all at once, his breath shaky. For a moment, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had helped bring this child and his dog back together, and in doing so, he had witnessed something even more miraculous, a bond that defied all odds, a promise that had been kept. As the evening progressed, Rick stayed with Luke and his foster family. They ate dinner together, and the conversation was light, filled with tentative hope. The family had been through their own struggles, and they understood what it meant to offer a safe haven. They assured Rick that Luke would have everything he needed while his mother recovered. But even as they spoke, there was something unspoken between them, the knowledge that this was just the beginning of a long road ahead. Luke's recovery would take time, just as Bella's had, but there was something in the air, something that had changed. The healing had begun. Before he left, Rick bent down and looked at Luke, who was sitting beside Bella on the couch, both of them curled together like two halves of the same soul. "Take care of her," Rick said softly. "And take care of yourself, okay? You're not alone anymore." Luke nodded, his small hand resting on Bella's head, his fingers tangled in her fur. "I will," he promised. "I'll never let her go again." Rick smiled, his heart light. He turned to leave, knowing that he had done what he set out to do. But as he opened the door, he heard Luke's voice calling after him. "Rick!" Rick turned. "Thank you," Luke said, his voice full of emotion. "Thank you for everything." Rick nodded, fighting the lump in his throat. "You're welcome." And as he closed the door behind him, he knew that for Luke, and for Bella, this was just the beginning of a new life, filled with love, hope, and the quiet promise of forever. The days that followed Luke's reunion with Bella were quiet, almost serene in their simplicity. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing moment, and every day seemed to bring a new spark of joy into their lives. But there was still a lingering uncertainty, a question left unanswered. What would happen when Emily, Luke's mother, woke up? Emily had been in a coma for nearly a week after a severe reaction to the treatment she had been receiving. The doctors had said that recovery would be slow, but they were hopeful. Luke had been staying with the foster family since the day he left Bella at the bus stop, but the weight of his mother's condition still weighed heavily on his heart. He visited her every day, sitting quietly beside her hospital bed, his hand resting gently on hers. He would talk to her softly, as if trying to reach her, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "Mom," he whispered one day, his voice fragile. "Bella's okay. I'm okay. I found a place to stay. They're taking care of me. I think everything's going to be okay." But deep down, he still wondered if things would ever truly be okay. Would his mom wake up? And if she did, how would she feel about everything that had happened? The hardest part wasn't seeing her in that bed. It was knowing that he had made a choice that had changed everything. He had left Bella behind to protect her, to make sure she wouldn't be taken from him. But would his mom understand? Would she forgive him? It was early in the morning when Emily's eyes finally fluttered open. For a moment she was disoriented, as though waking from a deep, dreamless sleep. Her vision blurred, and the world around her seemed distant, like she was floating in a sea of cotton. But then the familiar scent of antiseptic filled her nostrils, and the quiet hum of the hospital equipment around her brought her back to reality. Slowly, she blinked, focusing on the figure standing beside her bed. Luke. Her heart skipped a beat as she tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness swept over her, forcing her to lay back down. "Mom." Luke's voice was hesitant, almost as if he wasn't sure she would recognize him. "Luke," Emily croaked, her voice raspy and weak from days of silence. "Where am I? What happened?" "You're in the hospital, Mom," Luke said softly, taking her hand in his. "You've been really sick, but you're okay now. You're gonna get better." Emily's heart ached at the sight of her son, so grown up, so strong despite everything they had been through. But as the fog cleared from her mind, there was one thing that she needed to know. One thing that had been haunting her thoughts since she'd been unconscious. "Bella," she whispered, her voice shaking. Luke's eyes flickered with a hint of sadness, but he smiled gently. "She's okay, Mom. She's safe. I didn't want to leave her. I never wanted to leave her." Emily's brow furrowed in confusion. "Leave her? What do you mean?" Luke hesitated, his grip on her hand tightening. I had to leave Bella at the bus stop, Mom. I didn't want to, but I couldn't take care of her. I didn't want anyone to take her away from me. But she's okay. She's with me now." A flood of emotions washed over Emily: relief, guilt, confusion. She hadn't realized the weight of the decision Luke had made. Her heart broke as she saw the pain in his eyes. She had always tried to protect him, tried to shield him from the harshness of life. But in the process, she had never realized how much he was carrying on his own. "Oh, baby," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. You didn't have to do that. I didn't know. I didn't know how hard it had been for you." Luke's face crumpled as he tried to hold back the tears. "I didn't want you to worry. I just wanted to make sure Bella was safe." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she squeezed his hand, pulling him closer to her. "You're the bravest boy I know," she said softly, her voice filled with regret and love. "I'm so sorry for everything you've had to carry." "I'm sorry too," Luke whispered, his words full of emotion. "I never wanted to leave you, Mom. I didn't want to lose Bella." Emily wiped away the tears that had begun to fall. She knew that her son had carried this burden for far too long, and now that she was awake, it was time for them to heal, together. "I'm here now," she said gently, "and we'll get through this. All of us. Together." A few days later, Emily was discharged from the hospital. She was weak, but she was alive, and that was all that mattered. The foster family had offered to continue helping, but Emily knew she couldn't stay away from Luke for long. They were a family, and it was time for them to be whole again. Rick met Emily and Luke at the clinic, where Bella had been staying. The moment Bella saw Emily, her tail wagged frantically, and she ran to her side. It was as if Bella had been waiting too. She had known that her family would be whole again. Emily knelt down, tears streaming down her face as Bella licked her hand. "Oh, my sweet girl," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. But you're safe now. You're with us." Rick watched the reunion, his heart swelling with emotion. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when a broken family could finally heal. Bella, the dog who had waited so long, was no longer just a dog. She was a symbol of the love and hope that had kept them all going, even in the darkest moments. Luke stood by his mother's side, his hand resting on her shoulder, as they watched Bella and Emily embrace. He leaned in close to Rick, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Rick smiled warmly. "It was my pleasure. You and Bella, both of you, you deserve this. You deserve to be together." And in that moment, surrounded by love and warmth, Luke, Emily, and Bella were whole again. Life in Maple Hollow had a way of moving slowly, almost deliberately, as if the world itself was in no rush to leave behind the simple beauty of small-town living. But for Emily, Luke, and Bella, each day felt like the beginning of something new, something bright. They were no longer defined by what they had lost. They were defined by what they had found in each other. The first few weeks after Emily's release from the hospital were a whirlwind of emotions, tears, laughter, and a sense of relief that they had made it through the hardest part. Bella, ever loyal and patient, stayed by Emily's side at every moment. The dog's gentle nature had a calming effect on Emily, helping her adjust to life at home. There was no more worry about hospital visits, no more waiting in fear for the unknown. For the first time in months, Emily felt truly at peace. But it wasn't just the family that had changed. The entire community had shifted in response to their journey. Maple Hollow, once quiet and reserved, had become a place of open arms and unspoken understanding. It was as though everyone in the town had been waiting for something, a sign that hope wasn't lost, that there was more to life than the everyday struggles. And now, with the reunion of Emily, Luke, and Bella, that sign had come. It was a cold morning when Emily decided to take Bella for a walk through the park. The snow had stopped falling, but it still clung to the branches of the trees, creating a beautiful scene that seemed to freeze time itself. Luke had gone to school, and for the first time in a long while, Emily had the space to breathe, to be alone with her thoughts. Bella trotted beside her, her tail wagging as she sniffed at the fresh snow, her nose occasionally digging into the white blanket as if trying to uncover some hidden treasure. Emily smiled softly, her heart full as she watched her dog. Bella was more than just a pet. She was a symbol of survival, of resilience, of everything they had fought for. As Emily walked along the path, memories began to resurface. The day they had found Bella, the note, the pain of not knowing what had happened to Luke's father, and the unbearable heartache of feeling like there was no way out of the dark place she had been in. But now, everything was different. Emily had come to understand that life wasn't about avoiding the hard times. It was about learning to live through them, to keep moving forward. And she was moving forward, with Bella at her side. The days turned into weeks, and the healing process continued, slow but steady. Emily began working again, part-time at a local diner, where she had once worked before her illness had taken over. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. It was a reminder that she could stand on her own 2 feet again, that she was capable of making a life for herself and Luke, without relying on anyone else. And as Emily slowly found her footing, Luke thrived in ways she hadn't expected. His teachers at school reported improvements in his behavior, his attention span, and his overall mood. He was more open, more willing to engage with others. He had started drawing again. His artwork, once filled with shadows and sad figures, now showed color and light. He had even made a few new friends. And of course, there was Bella. She was with him at school every day, sitting quietly by his side during lunch, offering comfort and companionship to the other children. The way Bella had become a part of the fabric of their lives was nothing short of miraculous. She wasn't just a dog. She was their family. One afternoon, Emily sat in the small living room of their modest house, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee as she watched Luke play with Bella. They were in the backyard, the puppy bounding through the snow with a youthful energy that was infectious. Luke laughed as Bella chased him, her tail wagging like a metronome, a constant rhythm of joy. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking it all in, the warmth of the coffee, the sound of Luke's laughter, and the quiet presence of Bella. She had never imagined this moment. She had never imagined that she would find a way through the pain. But here they were, together. The phone rang, pulling Emily out of her thoughts. She set the coffee down and picked up the receiver. "Hello, Emily? It's Rick," came the familiar voice. "Hi, Rick. Emily said, a small smile on her lips. "What's up? I wanted to check in." Rick said, "How are you guys doing?" "We're doing good," Emily replied. "Better than I thought we would be." "That's good to hear," Rick said, his voice warm. "I've been thinking about you and Luke a lot. And Bella, of course. You guys have become a symbol for the whole town, you know." Emily chuckled softly. "I don't know about that." "No, seriously," Rick said. "Your story, it's inspired people. I've never seen anything like it. It's brought everyone together." Emily felt a lump in her throat as she thought about the kindness that had surrounded them, how the town had supported them, from the moment they had found Bella to the moment she had been discharged from the hospital. It had been a community effort, a shared mission to bring healing not just to a family, but to an entire town. "I don't know what we would have done without everyone," Emily said quietly. I think I've learned something through all this, that no matter how hard things get, there's always hope. There's always a way forward." Rick's voice softened. "You're right, and you've proven it." Later that evening, after Luke had gone to bed, Emily sat by the window, looking out at the starlit sky. The snow had started falling again, gently this time, as if the world itself was at peace. Bella lay at her feet, her head resting on Emily's lap. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt whole. There was still much to be done, healing to complete, struggles to face, but they were not alone anymore. The world, despite its challenges, still held beauty and possibility. And in that moment, Emily knew that she and her son and Bella had everything they needed, together. As winter began to give way to the first hints of spring, Maple Hollow seemed to awaken alongside Emily, Luke, and Bella. The town that had once been a quiet backdrop to their struggles had become a sanctuary, and the people within it had become a lifeline. It wasn't just about a family recovering from loss anymore. It was about the power of community, the strength of bonds formed in times of need, and the way that small acts of kindness could ripple through and transform an entire place. It was early one Saturday morning when Emily decided to take Bella for a walk to the local bakery, something she hadn't done in months. The weather was crisp, but the sun was brighter than it had been in days, and she felt a sense of lightness as she walked beside Bella. It was a feeling she had missed, freedom. For the first time, the weight of everything that had happened didn't feel as heavy. It was still there, but it was manageable. Life was moving forward, and with Bella at her side, Emily knew they would face whatever came next. As they approached the bakery, Emily spotted Mrs. Harper, an elderly woman who lived 2 streets over. Mrs. Harper was standing outside, waiting for the delivery of fresh bread, and she waved warmly when she saw Emily and Bella approaching. "Good morning, Emily." "Good morning, Bella," Mrs. Harper called, her voice as cheerful as always. "Good morning, Mrs. Harper," Emily replied, smiling. Bella, ever friendly, trotted over to the elderly woman, wagging her tail eagerly. Mrs. Harper bent down to pet Bella, her hands trembling slightly as she stroked the dog's fur. "She's a sweet girl," Mrs. Harper said softly, her eyes filled with affection. "I'm so glad she's with you, dear." Emily's smile faltered just slightly, a reminder of how different life had been just months ago. "We're lucky to have her," Emily said quietly. "She's brought so much healing to our family." "Well, it's more than just the 2 of you she's helping," Mrs. Harper said, her voice growing serious. "You know, ever since that day when Luke and Bella's story spread, things have been different around here. People are kinder. People are talking to each other again. There's this sense of, I don't know, of hope." Emily blinked, surprised. "Really? Oh yes," Mrs. Harper said with a nod. "I've seen it. People who were once so wrapped up in their own lives are now stopping to check on each other. Neighbors who didn't even know each other's names are helping out with chores, bringing meals, visiting. I've even noticed it with my own family. We've been closer than we've ever been." Emily's heart swelled. She had noticed it too. Of course, the subtle changes, the warmth in the eyes of the people she passed on the street, the way people smiled a little longer, said hello a little louder. But hearing Mrs. Harper speak so openly about it made the difference feel real. "I didn't realize it was so widespread," Emily said softly. "But that's amazing. It's just what we needed." Mrs. Harper's eyes twinkled. "You've started something, Emily. You and Luke. Bella's story has touched more people than you could ever imagine." Emily was silent for a moment, taking in the magnitude of what Mrs. Harper was saying. She had known that their journey had brought them closer, but the idea that it had affected the entire town, it felt like something more than just the right place at the right time. It felt like fate, like everything had aligned perfectly to bring them back to this town, to bring them back together, and to bring hope not only to their family, but to everyone around them. Before Emily could respond, Mrs. Harper gave her a knowing look. "You're an inspiration, Emily. You, Luke, and Bella. You've reminded us all what really matters." Emily's heart swelled with gratitude, and before she could find the words to express it, Mrs. Harper continued, "And I think it's time for you to know something. You're not just a story. You're a part of us now." Later that afternoon, Luke came home from school, his face lighting up when he saw his mother sitting on the porch with Bella at her feet. It had become their routine. Luke coming home from school to find his mother outside, the sun starting to set, with Bella at her side, the three of them coming together at the end of each day. Luke jogged over to them, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, Bella," he greeted, kneeling to pet the dog, who was wagging her tail enthusiastically. "Hi, sweetie," Emily said, reaching out to kiss the top of his head. "How was school?" "Good. We're learning about animals and science. I told my class about Bella," he said proudly, his chest puffing out a little. "I told them how I found her and how she saved me, and how she's been helping everyone since we got her back." "Really?" Emily said, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "What did they say?" "They said she's a hero." Luke laughed, his joy contagious. "And they all want to meet her, too. Some of my friends asked if she could come to show and tell next week." Emily chuckled, shaking her head. "I think Bella might be a little shy for show and tell, but we'll see." Luke grinned widely. "I think she'll love it." As the days continued to unfold, the changes in Maple Hollow were undeniable. The community, once quiet and reserved, had begun to open its heart, each small act of kindness leading to another. People visited the family more often, offering help in ways both big and small. Some neighbors mended fences. Others dropped by to bring freshly baked bread or homemade soup. The world had shifted, and it felt like everyone was a part of the change. But more than that, it was the simple, everyday moments that mattered the most. Luke, as he sat on the porch after school, telling stories of his day. Emily, smiling as she watched Bella curl up at her feet. And Bella herself, who had become a bridge between them all. In the weeks that followed, the story of Bella, Luke, and Emily became more than just a tale of a lost dog and a boy's love. It became a testament to the power of community, the strength of hope, and the ability of a single act of kindness to transform the world. They hadn't just found each other. They had found a way to heal, to move forward, and to create a life filled with love and understanding. As the spring months bloomed in full force, Maple Hollow took on a new life. The snow had melted, leaving behind a blanket of lush green grass and budding flowers. The streets, once quiet and reflective of a tight-knit community that kept to itself, were now vibrant with the sounds of children playing, neighbors chatting, and the distant hum of laughter echoing in the air. And at the center of it all was Emily, Luke, and Bella, unintentionally, but undeniably, the heart of the town. It had been a little over 2 months since that fateful winter day when the school bus driver had found Bella hidden inside a backpack at the bus stop. Since then, their story had become more than just a local legend. It had touched the lives of everyone in Maple Hollow, sparking a ripple of compassion and empathy that seemed to grow with each passing day. Emily and Luke were used to seeing familiar faces whenever they stepped out of the house. Smiling neighbors, friendly greetings, and on many occasions, random acts of kindness that never failed to take them by surprise. But what they hadn't expected was how their bond with Bella had slowly become a symbol of hope and unity within the community. One afternoon, as Emily and Luke walked through the park, a soft breeze swirled around them, sending the blossoms from the trees into the air like confetti. Bella trotted beside them, her fur now glossy and well-kept, her steps full of energy and joy. Luke laughed as Bella playfully nudged him, trying to get him to run, but he was more interested in something he had just noticed. "Mom, look," Luke said, pointing excitedly at a small group of children gathered near the playground. Emily followed his gaze and saw that the children were all kneeling in front of a small makeshift stage, where they had set up a little bench for Bella. On the bench was a sign, "Meet Bella, our hero." A proud smile spread across Emily's face as she realized what was happening. The children had organized an impromptu tribute to the dog, who had changed their lives. The bench was surrounded by handmade cards, colorful drawings of Bella, and a few small toys. Some of the kids were even wearing homemade t-shirts with Bella's face drawn on them. "This is so sweet," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. "They did this for Bella?" Luke nodded, his smile wide. "Yeah, they wanted to thank her for helping me feel better. They said she's the reason they've all been kinder to each other." As Emily watched the children interact with Bella, who was sitting patiently on the bench, her heart swelled with pride. These kids, who had once been distracted by their own small problems, were now looking out for one another. The town's transformation, from a place of quiet separation to one of open-hearted connection, had started to take root in the youngest generation. It was then that Emily realized that Bella had done more than just heal her family. She had healed the entire town in ways no one could have expected. People who had once been too busy to notice each other were now stopping to chat, to ask how things were going, to offer help when it was needed. Neighbors who had barely spoken before now shared stories, laughter, and meals together. Bella had, in her simple way, reminded everyone of what truly mattered: connection. That evening, Emily and Luke sat down for dinner with Mrs. Harper, who had come over to join them. The warmth of the meal and the quiet hum of conversation felt like a balm for Emily's soul. She had learned to find peace in moments like these, the small, intimate ones where the world didn't feel so overwhelming. As they ate, Mrs. Harper looked over at Bella, who was lying contentedly on the floor beside them, her eyes half closed in contentment. "I have to say," Mrs. Harper began, her voice tinged with emotion, "I've seen a lot of things in my time, but what you and Bella have done for this town, it's incredible. You've given us all something we didn't even know we needed." Emily looked at Mrs. Harper, her heart full. "I never thought we were doing anything special. We were just trying to survive. But I think Bella was the one who saved us. She brought us together." Mrs. Harper smiled, her wrinkles deepening. "You may not have realized it at the time, but your story, all of you, has inspired so many people. Even the quietest ones, the ones who don't talk much, have been changed. And that's because you didn't give up. You fought through the hardest of times and found a way to keep going. And now, it's like this whole town is a little brighter because of it." Emily felt the truth in Mrs. Harper's words. She had been broken once, lost in the darkness, unsure if she could ever find the strength to get up again. But Bella had pulled her out of that place, and now, the town had come together in a way that felt like a second chance for everyone. There was more love, more understanding, and more compassion than Emily could have ever imagined. As the evening went on, they talked about the small ways that things had changed, how the church had started hosting regular community dinners, how the local grocery store had begun organizing donation drives to help families in need, and how the school had started teaching lessons on kindness and empathy. Emily's heart swelled as she realized that these weren't just one-time gestures. These were lasting changes, real shifts in how people viewed each other, how they treated each other. And Bella, the little puppy who had been abandoned at a bus stop, was at the center of it all. The next day, the town held a small ceremony in the park to celebrate Bella and her role in bringing Maple Hollow back together. Emily and Luke stood at the front, holding Bella as she wagged her tail happily. People from all over town gathered, each person sharing stories of how Bella had impacted their lives. Some told stories of how they had witnessed the transformation in their children. Others talked about how they had been inspired to reconnect with old friends or family members they had grown distant from. The ceremony ended with a small plaque being unveiled at the base of the tree where the makeshift hero bench had been set up. The plaque read, "Bella, a symbol of hope, love, and the power of second chances." As Emily gazed out at the faces of the people who had come to honor Bella, She realized that this was the true gift. Bella had shown them that love was not a finite resource. It didn't run out or fade away. It multiplied, and it healed. She had given Maple Hollow a lesson they would never forget, that sometimes it is the most unexpected places, the smallest moments, that can change everything. Bella had taught them all the true meaning of home. The days after the ceremony in the park felt like a turning point, not just for the town, but for Emily and Luke too. They had long since accepted that Bella was no longer just a dog to them. She was family. She was the anchor in their lives, the source of hope that had sustained them when they had no strength left. But the more they reflected on it, the more they realized that Bella had done far more than that. She had given them a new purpose. She had shown them what it meant to truly live in the moment, to care for one another, and to appreciate the quiet beauty of the world around them. The town of Maple Hollow had become a reflection of their journey. It was still small and quiet, but it had been changed, and Emily and Luke had become a part of that change. One bright morning, after a few weeks of newfound calm, Emily stood by the window, watching the sunrise. The light filled the room in soft hues of pink and gold, and for a brief moment, Emily let herself be consumed by the beauty of it. There was something profound in the stillness, something that made her believe that, despite everything, things would be okay. Bella, as always, was by her side, curled up in her favorite spot on the couch. Luke had left for school earlier, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his face glowing with excitement about another show-and-tell day at school, where Bella was the guest of honor once again. But as Emily watched the world wake up outside, she realized that she, too, had been reborn in a sense. The trauma, the fear, the anger that had once filled her heart had softened, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and gratitude. But Emily also knew that life wouldn't stop moving forward. Luke was growing older, and his need for adventure and independence would soon lead him into new territories. And Bella, though she had brought so much healing, wasn't going to be with them forever. It was a quiet thought, one that Emily tried not to entertain for too long, but it was there, lingering at the edges of her mind. Still, in that moment, with the sun rising and Bella sleeping soundly, Emily made a promise to herself. She would cherish every moment. She would hold onto every laugh, every smile, and every shared glance between her and Luke. They had already survived so much, and with Bella by their side, they could face anything. Their love for each other had already been tested in ways that most families would never have to endure. But it was stronger than ever, and that strength, Emily realized, was the foundation of everything to come. It was that evening, as Emily was preparing dinner, when she received a call from Mrs. Harper, who had been keeping in touch with her regularly. "Emily, dear, I wanted to ask if you'd like to come over this weekend." Mrs. Harper's voice crackled through the phone. "We're hosting a town-wide event at the church to celebrate the changes that have come to Maple Hollow. It's going to be a special evening, and we'd love for you and Luke to be a part of it." Emily felt a rush of warmth. "That sounds wonderful, Mrs. Harper. Thank you so much. We'd be honored." "Well, we're planning a dinner and a few speeches. I know it might sound a little formal, but I think it's a good way to bring everyone together, to show how far we've come since all of this began." Emily paused for a moment, feeling a swell of emotion. "I can't believe how much this town has changed. I didn't realize the ripple effect until now." "That's the beauty of it, Emily. What you and Luke started, it's touched all of us. Bella has been more than a pet. She's been a catalyst for something bigger." Emily's heart beat a little faster, the words settling deep in her chest. "I'll be there," she said softly, her voice full of gratitude. "Thank you." As they hung up, Emily felt a sense of pride she hadn't known before. Bella's story had transcended their little family, and now it had become part of the very fabric of their town. It was a reminder of the power of love and the way it could heal wounds, mending what had once seemed broken. The evening of the event, the church hall was filled with warmth, both literally and emotionally. The long tables were covered with white tablecloths, each adorned with fresh flowers, and the walls were decorated with photos of Bella, some taken at the park ceremony, others from around town, where Bella had touched lives in different ways. Emily and Luke arrived a little early, the atmosphere buzzing with anticipation. Bella, ever the center of attention, was carefully placed in her favorite spot by the fireplace, where she was surrounded by people who came up one by one to thank her, to pet her, and to tell her how much she had meant to them. Luke, beaming with pride, spoke to anyone who would listen about how Bella had saved him and his family, and how she had made the town a better place. It wasn't long before the speeches began. The mayor stood at the front, holding a microphone, his face flushed with emotion. "Tonight, we are here to honor a special member of our community," he began, his voice steady but filled with warmth. "Not only has she brought light into the lives of one family, but she's reminded all of us of what truly matters: community, love, and kindness. Bella, you've taught us all that a second chance is never too late." The room fell silent as the mayor gestured toward Bella, who was sitting at the front of the room with Emily and Luke. The applause that followed was filled with love, respect, and deep gratitude, and Emily felt the tears welling up in her eyes. Bella, the little puppy who had once been abandoned at a bus stop, had become the heart of Maple Hollow. As the evening wore on, people came together not only to celebrate Bella, but to celebrate what they had all become in the process. They shared stories, laughter, and hopes for the future. It was a night filled with new beginnings, with the promise that the town would continue to grow stronger, more compassionate, and more connected. And as Emily stood there, watching Luke and Bella interact with their neighbors, she realized that she had already found what she had been searching for. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about living, truly living, with love and a sense of belonging. And that was enough. As the days continued to pass, Maple Hollow flourished. The town had become a shining example of resilience, unity, and hope. The impact of Bella's arrival went far beyond the initial rescue. She had become a beacon for the town's transformation, a reminder of the power of second chances and the importance of love in healing old wounds. For Emily, life had taken on a new rhythm. There was a quiet peace in her days now, a sense of balance she had never felt before. She continued to work from home, writing articles for local newspapers and blogs, often focusing on the stories of the people she had come to know so well. Every once in a while, she'd sit by the window, watching Bella and Luke play in the yard, and reflect on how far they had come. But even with all the progress, there were moments when the shadows of the past crept in. Though the pain of losing her husband had dulled, it was never completely gone. There were quiet moments when Emily would catch herself staring into space, as if trying to make sense of the life she had now. This life that she had never anticipated. The loss still lingered, especially on the anniversaries of his passing or during moments when Luke spoke of his father with a wistful tone. It was one of those moments, on a particularly quiet evening in late autumn, that Emily sat on the porch swing, Bella curled up beside her, when she saw Luke walking toward her, his hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket. His expression was serious, but his eyes held the light of a child who had lived 1,000 emotions in a single year. "Mom," he said, sitting beside her, "can we talk?" Emily smiled softly, her heart swelling at the thought of her son. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" Luke hesitated for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. "It's about Dad. I know we don't talk about him much, but I've been thinking about him lately. About how he would have loved Bella, and how you've been so strong since everything happened." Emily's heart fluttered. She had never expected Luke to bring up his father in such a direct way. The quiet grief that had been her constant companion suddenly felt like a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying. "I know it's hard, Luke," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. "I know you miss him, and I do too, every day." Luke's eyes softened as he looked at her. "It's okay, Mom. I know you've done your best, and I think Bella, well, she's been kind of like a second chance for all of us." Emily swallowed the lump in her throat. "Bella's been a gift. She's helped us heal in ways I didn't even know we needed." Luke nodded. She's like the part of Dad that's still with us. The love, the care, the happiness." The words hit Emily harder than she expected. It was true. Bella, in her own quiet way, had brought the joy back to their home. She had filled the empty spaces that were once haunted by memories of what was lost. For a moment, they sat there in silence, the rustling of leaves the only sound between them. The setting sun cast a warm, golden light over the landscape, and the world seemed to stand still in that brief, fleeting moment of connection. For the first time in a long while, Emily didn't feel as though she was carrying the weight of the past alone. "Mom, I think it's time I let go of some of the hurt," Luke said, his voice quiet but sure. "It doesn't mean I'll forget him, but I think I can start being okay, you know? I've got you, and I've got Bella, and that feels pretty good." Tears filled Emily's eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude, the kind of raw, unfiltered gratitude that only comes when you realize just how far you've come. She hugged Luke close, pulling him into a tight embrace. "I'm so proud of you, Luke," Emily whispered, kissing the top of his head. "I don't think you'll ever fully understand just how much strength you've given me. You and Bella both." As they sat together, Emily's mind wandered to the future. She didn't know exactly what the years would bring, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She had built a life from the pieces of her past, and she had learned that healing didn't happen all at once. It was a journey, a slow, steady unfolding of hope. With Luke and Bella by her side, Emily knew she was no longer alone. A few weeks later, the town gathered again for a celebration, this time not to mark the past, but to honor the future. The local elementary school had invited Emily, Luke, and Bella to speak at their annual community event. It was a day of laughter, music, and the sharing of stories. But as Emily stood before the crowd, holding Bella's leash, she realized just how far they had come. She looked out over the sea of faces, friends, neighbors, and families that had stood by them through thick and thin. And for the first time, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged. "Thank you," Emily began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Thank you for being a part of our journey, for showing us that we don't have to go through life alone, and that love can heal the deepest wounds. Bella has taught us more than we could have ever imagined. She's not just a dog. She's family, and we're so lucky to have her." Bella wagged her tail, her eyes bright with the love and devotion she had shown them every single day. "And to my son, Luke," Emily continued, her gaze shifting to him, "I couldn't be more proud of the young man you've become. You've helped me see the light in the darkest times, and I know that together we can face anything." The crowd erupted in applause, and Emily felt a warm glow fill her chest. She had found her way through the storm. They all had, and Bella had been the lighthouse guiding them home. As winter settled into Maple Hollow, the days grew colder, but Emily and Luke's hearts remained warm. It was now 3 months since the town's celebratory gathering, and the changes in their lives were palpable. The healing process had not been quick, nor had it been easy. But as the world outside turned to shades of gray and white, their family, now a trio, had found a way to move forward with love and gratitude. Bella had become an undeniable fixture in their lives. Her presence, no longer just that of a dog, had become a symbol of all the things that could go right after something had gone wrong. She had bonded with Luke in a way Emily never anticipated, the two of them inseparable. And even though Bella had endured unimaginable loss before she'd ever found them, she had a calm resilience that became a cornerstone in their home. But as the new year dawned, Emily realized that it wasn't just Bella who had helped heal her and Luke. It was their community, their town, and the act of opening their hearts again to the love they had once been too afraid to embrace. One cold morning in early January, as snowflakes danced lightly in the air, Emily found herself sitting in the living room, the fire crackling gently as she reviewed some paperwork. Luke was at school, and Bella, as always, was curled up by her feet, the two of them enjoying a rare moment of peace. But the quiet was interrupted by a knock at the door. Emily glanced up, puzzled, wondering who could be visiting at this time of day. When she opened it, she was met with an unexpected sight. Standing on her doorstep was Mrs. Harper, holding a large envelope in her hand. The older woman's eyes were shining with a mixture of excitement and determination. "Good morning, Emily," Mrs. Harper greeted with her warm smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I wanted to bring you something." "Of course, Mrs. Harper, come in," Emily said, stepping aside to let her in. "What's all this?" Mrs. Harper held out the envelope, her face lit with an almost conspiratorial look. "It's from the Maple Hollow History Preservation Committee. They've been working on something for a while now, and they felt it was time to present it to you and your family. It's a little surprise." Emily's brow furrowed as she took the envelope, curiosity swirling in her chest. She pulled out a piece of thick paper, and as she read it, her heart skipped a beat. It was a proclamation from the town's historical committee, officially naming Bella as the honorary Heart of Maple Hollow. "We've decided," Mrs. Harper said gently, "that Bella has given more to this town than any one of us could have ever imagined. Her story has touched everyone, and so we want to honor her strength, her resilience, and the way she brought this community together." Emily's eyes welled up with tears as she absorbed the words. She had always known Bella was special, but seeing it recognized by the people of Maple Hollow, by the very people who had once been strangers, was an overwhelming feeling. I don't know what to say," Emily whispered, choking back the emotions threatening to spill over. "There's nothing to say, dear," Mrs. Harper replied, her voice warm and kind. "It's simply the truth. Bella's story is Maple Hollow's story now, and we're all the better for it." The proclamation would be displayed at the town hall, and there would be a small ceremony later in the year to officially commemorate Bella's place in their town's history. The town had always been quiet, content with its simplicity, but in the wake of Bella's arrival, they had grown. They had learned to embrace each other's stories, each other's pain, and each other's joy. They had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness could have far-reaching effects. After Mrs. Harper left, Emily sat on the couch, her mind racing. This small, unexpected gesture had taken her breath away. Bella had been the one to mend their broken pieces, but now, it seemed, she was also healing the town. She realized that everything had come full circle. The decision to rescue Bella wasn't just about saving her, it was about saving them all. As the snow continued to fall outside, Emily turned to Bella, who was lying on the rug, her big brown eyes staring up at her. Bella's tail thumped once against the floor, as if she knew something special had just happened. Emily reached down and patted her, her heart swelling with love. "You've done it, Bella," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "You've made all the difference. You've given us everything." A few days later, Emily and Luke stood in front of the window, watching as the snow fell in delicate sheets, covering the ground like a soft blanket. The world outside felt quieter, almost as though it was holding its breath in the presence of something sacred. "Mom," Luke's voice broke the silence. "I've been thinking, maybe we could do something special for Bella, something to show her how much we love her." Emily smiled, looking down at Luke, her heart full. "What did you have in mind?" Luke's face lit up, his excitement palpable. "What if we took her on a little trip? Just the three of us. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere we can all just be together. I think it's what she deserves. She's done so much for us, and I want to give her something back." Emily thought for a moment. A trip, just the three of them. It was perfect. A chance to get away, to recharge, and to honor the bond they had all created. She couldn't think of a better way to show Bella how much she meant to them. "I love that idea," Emily said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Let's do it. We can plan a weekend getaway. Just us. Just Bella." And with that, they made their plans. They would drive to a quiet cabin by the lake, surrounded by the beauty of nature, far from the worries of the world. It would be a celebration of everything they had overcome and everything they had gained. A reminder that no matter what had happened in the past, they were stronger for it. Together, the weekend getaway was everything Emily and Luke had hoped for and more. The cabin was nestled in a small, secluded forest, tucked away from the bustle of Maple Hollow. It was the perfect place for the three of them, Emily, Luke, and Bella, to escape from the noise of daily life and simply breathe. The world outside seemed to stand still in this peaceful oasis, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt a sense of calm she hadn't realized she was missing. They had arrived the previous afternoon, just as the sun began to set, casting long, golden rays across the landscape. Bella had trotted alongside them with her usual boundless energy, tail wagging, nose twitching at the unfamiliar scents of the woods. Luke had already made plans to explore the nearby trails, while Emily had unpacked and settled into the cozy space. savoring the crackling warmth of the fireplace. That evening, as the fire flickered and danced in the hearth, the family sat together, wrapped in blankets, with Bella curled up at their feet. The atmosphere was one of quiet contentment, with no pressure, no expectations, just a moment to be present, to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. "I'm glad we did this," Emily said, her voice soft but sincere. "I think we needed it." Luke nodded, looking at the fire. "It's nice here, away from everything. It's like we're in our own little world." Bella let out a soft sigh, resting her head on her paws, content and peaceful in the warmth of the room. Emily looked at her son, her heart swelling with love. "You know, Luke, when we first brought Bella home, I never imagined how much she'd change our lives. I thought we were rescuing her, but it turns out she was rescuing us." Luke smiled, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the fire. "I know, Mom. It's like she was waiting for us, too. Like she knew exactly what we needed." The simplicity of the moment, the quiet conversation, the warmth of the fire, the steady presence of Bella, felt like the most perfect kind of healing. Emily realized then that this was the gift Bella had given them. Not just a chance to heal, but the opportunity to see the world through a lens of love, patience, and understanding. Bella had taught them to slow down, to appreciate the small moments, to find joy in the quiet corners of life. The next morning, after a hearty breakfast of pancakes and eggs, they set off on a hike through the forest. The air was crisp, the sky a pale blue, and the snow covered the ground like a soft, untouched blanket. Bella bounded ahead of them, her joyful bark echoing through the trees. She was in her element here, and Luke couldn't help but laugh as he tried to keep up with her, her energy contagious. As they walked, Emily and Luke talked about everything and nothing. They shared stories, laughed at silly memories, and took in the breathtaking beauty of the winter landscape. It was a simple day, but in its simplicity, it felt like everything had fallen into place. At one point, they stopped by a small creek, the water rushing beneath the ice. The sound was soothing, a quiet reminder that life moved forward, even in the coldest of times. Emily sat on a large rock, watching as Luke crouched down to pet Bella, who had stopped to drink from the creek, her tail wagging in delight. Emily smiled, taking a deep breath of the fresh, crisp air. She realized then that this was what they had been waiting for all along. Not some grand moment or dramatic gesture, but the quiet, everyday moments that made life worth living. "Mom, I think I get it now," Luke said, turning to her. "I get why we had to go through everything we did. It wasn't just to find Bella, it was to find out what really matters." Emily's heart swelled as she looked at him. "And what's that, sweetheart?" Luke's gaze was steady, his expression thoughtful. "It's love. It's the people who love you. It's the moments you share with them. It's the dogs who never give up on you." Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she reached over to squeeze his hand. "You're right, Luke. That's what it's all about." They sat together on the rock, Bella resting her head on Luke's lap, the world around them serene and untouched. The town of Maple Hollow felt far away now, but Emily knew that the lessons they had learned here would stay with them forever. As they began the walk back to the cabin, Luke had an idea. "Mom, what if we did something for Bella? Something to show her how much we appreciate her." Emily looked at her son, her heart full. "What do you have in mind?" Luke smiled, his eyes shining with excitement. "We could make her a little ceremony. You know, like a thank you party. Just the three of us. We could give her a special collar or a little gift. Something to show her she's part of our family forever." Emily chuckled, her heart bursting with affection. "I love that idea, Luke. She's definitely earned it." When they returned to the cabin, they made plans to spend the rest of the day creating Bella's special gift. They decided to handcraft a collar with a name tag that read Bella, our heart, our family. Luke spent hours designing the collar, carefully picking out colors and materials, while Emily helped him stitch it together. That night, as the fire crackled in the hearth and Bella lay by their feet, they presented her with her new collar. Luke carefully placed it around her neck, and they both knelt down to give her a gentle hug. "You're our heart, Bella," Emily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "And we'll always be here for you, no matter what." Bella's tail thumped gently against the floor, her eyes bright with the love she had shown them every single day. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family and the love of a dog who had given them everything, Emily knew that life, no matter how challenging, was always worth living when you had someone to love and someone who loved you back. And Bella, their loyal companion, had given them a gift they could never repay. The drive back to Maple Hollow was quiet, but in the best possible way. Emily, Luke, and Bella were all tired from their adventure, the kind of tired that wasn't just physical but emotional too. The trip had been everything they needed, an opportunity to reflect, to heal, and to strengthen the bond they had formed over the past few months. They had not just found a way to love each other, but to love life again, to embrace the second chances they had been given, and to honor the lessons Bella had brought into their lives. But as they neared the town, something was different. The snow had begun to fall once more, but this time, it wasn't the same cold, oppressive snow that had surrounded them when they first found Bella at the bus stop. It was soft, gentle, like the town itself had wrapped them in a comforting embrace. Maple Hollow had changed, too. The healing had been slow but steady, like the growth of a flower that blooms in its own time. When they pulled into the driveway of their house, Luke's face lit up. "Mom, look, there's a whole bunch of people gathered at the community center. What's going on?" Emily followed his gaze, noticing the small crowd gathering near the town's community hall. Curiosity piqued. They all got out of the car, Bella trotting happily beside them, as if sensing the energy in the air. "Let's go see," Emily said, smiling down at her son. "Maybe it's some kind of celebration." As they walked down the snowy street toward the community center, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth spread through her. The people of Maple Hollow had been so kind to them throughout the months since Bella's arrival. They had embraced her, not just as a dog, but as a symbol of hope. Emily knew that whatever this gathering was, it had something to do with Bella. As they approached the gathering, they were greeted by familiar faces. Mrs. Harper, the town's sweethearted librarian, stood by the door, her arms outstretched in welcome. "Emily, Luke, and of course Bella," she exclaimed, her voice full of joy. "We've been waiting for you." Emily was confused but also touched by the warmth in Mrs. Harper's eyes. "Waiting for us? What's going on?" Mrs. Harper smiled and gestured for them to come inside. "It's a surprise, dear. We all wanted to show you how much Bella has touched this town, how much she's given to us." Inside the community center, the space was filled with warmth, the kind of atmosphere that only a close-knit town like Maple Hollow could create. A large banner hung on the wall reading, "A celebration of Bella, the heart of our community." Luke's eyes widened in disbelief. "Wait, what? You're celebrating Bella?" Mrs. Harper nodded. "Yes, indeed. We all wanted to do something special for her, for the way she's brought us together, for the way she's helped heal this town in ways none of us could have imagined." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she looked around the room. The tables were filled with handmade cards, little gifts, and even a scrapbook documenting Bella's journey, from that first cold morning at the bus stop to the day she had become a symbol of hope. It was clear that every person in the room had contributed something, a kind word, a gesture of love, or a personal memory of how Bella had touched their lives. But the most powerful part of the celebration was the moment when the mayor of Maple Hollow, a kind and soft-spoken man named Mr. Caldwell, stood up at the front of the room. He cleared his throat and addressed the gathering, his voice filled with emotion. "I've lived in this town my entire life, and I've never seen anything quite like this. When Bella first arrived here, none of us knew what to expect, but what we found was a dog that wasn't just looking for a home. She was looking to show us all what it means to love, to be patient, and to never give up. Bella's story is not just a story of a lost dog finding a family. It's a story of this town, this community, finding its way back to each other." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of Mr. Caldwell's words settling over everyone. Then, as if on cue, everyone in the room began to clap, soft at first, then louder, until it was a thunderous applause that echoed off the walls. Bella's tail wagged furiously as she looked around, unsure of why everyone was so excited, but basking in the love being showered upon her. Emily felt tears stream down her face as she looked at her son, who was equally moved by the outpouring of affection for their dog. He reached down to pet Bella, who licked his hand, oblivious to the impact she had had on every single person in the room. "She's truly our heart," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. After a few moments, the crowd began to quiet, and the mayor stepped forward again, holding up a small wooden plaque. "On behalf of the town of Maple Hollow, we'd like to present this to Bella. It reads, 'For bringing hope, love, and unity to our community. We thank you, Bella, for showing us the power of second chances.'" With that, the mayor placed the plaque gently around Bella's neck, securing it with the new collar Emily and Luke had made. The room erupted in applause again, and Emily could hardly contain the lump in her throat. She knew, deep down, that this moment would be one she would treasure forever. As the evening wore on, the celebration continued with food, music, and heartfelt speeches from several other townspeople, all sharing their own stories of how Bella had impacted their lives. Some had shared how her presence had helped them through dark days, while others spoke of the lessons she had taught them about resilience, love, and forgiveness. The sense of community was overwhelming. In that moment, Emily realized that she hadn't just brought Bella into her home. She had brought her into the heart of Maple Hollow, and the town had, in turn, embraced her as one of their own. By the end of the evening, Emily felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. The journey had been long, filled with heartache, fear, and uncertainty, but it had also been filled with love, growth, and healing. Bella had not only saved their family, but she had saved the entire town, one paw print at a time. The evening lingered long after the last of the guests had left the community center. The warm glow of the fire still flickered in the homes of Maple Hollow. But for Emily, Luke, and Bella, the night was a quiet celebration of everything they had come to understand about love, sacrifice, and second chances. As they walked back to their house, Bella trotting happily by their side, Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude. The plaque around Bella's neck, the symbol of the town's appreciation for their furry friend, glimmered softly in the moonlight, just as her heart did, full of joy and wonder. "Mom, I didn't expect this," Luke said, his voice still filled with amazement. "I mean, I knew Bella meant a lot to people, but I didn't know it was like this. Everyone loves her so much." Emily smiled at her son, the weight of the day's events settling gently in her heart. "I think Bella's love is like a ripple in the water, Luke. It started with us, and now it's reaching everyone. The way she loves, it's contagious. She's shown us all how to be a little kinder, a little more patient." Luke nodded, his eyes sparkling with understanding. "And it all started because we didn't give up on her." "That's right," Emily replied softly. "Sometimes the hardest part is the waiting. But when you don't give up, when you keep going, beautiful things can happen." They arrived home, and Bella bounded inside first, as if she knew this was where she belonged. The house was warm and inviting, the way they had left it that morning before heading to the community center. It was a quiet night, and for once, there was no rush to go anywhere, to do anything. All that mattered was being together. As they settled in, Luke sat down with Bella, gently brushing his hand through her thick, soft fur. She nuzzled him affectionately, her eyes filled with trust and love. Emily watched them, her heart swelling with emotion. "I think Bella's made me a better person," Luke said, looking up at his mom. "She's taught me so much, about being brave, about loving without holding back. I think she's taught us both that we can start over, no matter what happened before." Emily's eyes filled with tears as she sat beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "She's made me a better person too. I was afraid for so long, Luke. Afraid of opening my heart again, afraid of loving so deeply. But Bella showed me that love is never weakness. It's the strongest thing we have." The two of them sat there for a while, the room peaceful and filled with the comforting sound of Bella's gentle breathing. Emily was still processing everything that had happened in the past few months. It felt like a lifetime ago that she had found Bella at the bus stop, alone, cold, and trembling. Now, as they sat in the warmth of their home, surrounded by love, she knew that everything had changed. For them, for the town, and for Bella. As the night wore on, Emily and Luke took turns telling Bella about the adventures they had planned for the future. They spoke of road trips, visits to the beach, and hiking in the mountains, all the places they would explore together as a family. Bella's tail thumped gently against the floor, as if she understood that these plans were more than just words. They were promises. Promises of a future filled with love, joy, and belonging. In the quiet of that moment, Emily realized something. Bella hadn't just been waiting for a home. She had been waiting for them to understand her. And in doing so, they had come to understand themselves, too. They had learned the true meaning of unconditional love. The kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return, but gives everything, over and over again. The next morning, as the sun rose and the town began to stir with the quiet rhythms of everyday life, Emily, Luke, and Bella made their way to the local park. It was their new routine, starting the day with a walk, a moment of quiet reflection, and a reminder that they were all in this together. As they strolled along the snowy path, Bella running ahead, her joyous bark echoing through the trees, Emily looked at her son, her heart full. "You know, Luke," she said softly, "this might just be the beginning. Bella's story doesn't end here. It's only just started." Luke nodded. "Yeah, Mom, and I think we're going to make it a good one. Together." Bella stopped to sniff a patch of snow, her tail wagging furiously as she ran back to them, the happiest dog on earth. Emily crouched down to give her a hug, the warmth of her love spreading through her like a ripple in water. The love they shared was deep, unshakable, and eternal. And as long as they had each other, they would face whatever came next, together. The future was bright, and it belonged to them.